One.
Hello and welcome to it's my channel. So it's the Typhon Blue channel, or I think it's also at Gender Attic. That is one R and two T's, not two R's and one T. But
Pretty sure it's
anyway,
just
so
Typhon Blue, isn't it?
oh yeah,
That's what it
I
is on
guess
the.
you could probably just do a search on Typhon Blue. Hello,
Yeah.
all of you new people who have subscribed due to someone publicizing my threat narrative series. Yes, I did predict the downfall of the West by the left in 2013, but most people didn't see it because nobody was really paying attention to any of this stuff at that point. But anyway, hello. This is a stream in which we discuss issues related to storytelling. And today's topic is and by the way, I'm with Brian, the
Yeah.
Indomitable.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
I
This is
also work here. Yeah.
but today we're going to be discussing media that appeals to men. Why does it exclude women? Or why is it perceived to exclude women? And we are also going to be going through this video, which actually Brian suggested. So maybe tell us bit about the context of the video and why you suggested it and that good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I could. Okay. I'll give it a quick mention. I'm wondering
Yeah.
why is my. Okay. Well, it's fine. Hold on a second. Let me just make sure that I got the scene
And
switcher thing working.
for those of you
But
who are here from the main channel, you'll be happy to note that my rat's nest of cables is somewhat organized now. So hopefully there will not be an excessive amount of bumping my microphone and making it turn off completely. Here's hoping.
hopefully,
Hopefully.
hopefully. Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So what we're looking at is basically I was just like scrolling through the webs, just looking at what people were talking about on YouTube, and based on like the kind of stuff I look at, mostly cultural, I got this video from a YouTube channel called Nutsa or Nutsa, Nutsa, and it was entitled "Star Wars is Not for Women," and it puts "not" in parentheses, and it's talking about Disney Star Wars, which is sort of like the current iteration. So, just for the record, this video is about Star Wars specifically, but I think that it's got like enough meat on it that there's stuff to discuss outside of that. So let's not limit ourselves. You know, like people are like, well, I'm not a fan of Star Wars, so I don't want to watch this. It's like, no, but if you're a fan of stories in general, this might be for you. You might want to stick around and check it out, because this isn't really about Star Wars, but this is Nutz's video, is the vehicle. So that's what and in it, I don't want to get into it too much, but she talks about, like, she doesn't like the direction of Star Wars. She doesn't like the Disney Star Wars direction. She doesn't like the Acolyte. She thinks it's all just really bad storytelling. But then there is a couple of strange defenses for like the case that Star Wars has historically been for men and that women were or felt excluded. And I think that that's the thing that I want to get into a little bit. So now that we have that established, I guess we will start the video. Yeah, let's get into it. So I'm gonna move the source up here, and here we go.
Just avoid any more female advice. You gotta be able to get at it. So let's get moving.
So, a while ago I made a video about incompetent female writers in Hollywood, their responsibilities in terms of representing their gender realized by everyone but themselves, expressed my fears that sooner or later their undeniable lack of brains combined with their impressive level of commitment towards remaining completely passionless towards their very job that pays them millions was going to affect the perception of female filmmakers, movie lovers, their intelligence, abilities, interests, and morals in a very negative way in the future.
So, do you see? Okay, Allison's not here. I mean, her camera's off. So here's my issue with this. Actually, you know what, Allison? Did you hear that? And do you see what I'm about to bring up? Like this?
Yep.
What is it that you picked up from this right off the bat?
Um God damn, I'm blanking.
Do you want me to play it back
I
again?
didn't realize there was going to be a pop quiz. I'm
No,
sorry.
I'll go back. I'll play it again. Just listen
Okay.
this time, okay? Listen, okay, to her setup, because this person, just so you know, this woman, she does not like Disney Star Wars. She hates it. She is a Star Wars fan. She has really decent critiques of all of the problems. Like they're on point. But there is a premise that she brings up right at the beginning that I think has me, my noodle boiling. So let me play it.
So, a while ago I made a video about incompetent female writers in Hollywood. Their responsibilities in terms of representing their gender realized by everyone but themselves, expressed my fears that sooner or later their undeniable lack of brains combined with their impressive level of commitment towards remaining completely passionless towards their very job that pays them millions was going to affect the perception of female filmmakers, movie lovers, their intelligence, abilities, interests, and morals in a very negative way in the future.
Okay, so this is about how women are affected. Women dominating filmmaking, women most affected.
Yeah, well, ultimately what she's saying is, oh, I've made these videos about incompetent female directors and writers and showrunners, etc. And what I was afraid of, like, so her primary fear is not that we're just getting shit content, because we are. Her fear is not that the culture is, at a lower quality, as running at a lower like frequency than it has historically. Her fear is that people are going to see women as bad for movies because of these women who are making really bad movies. So her fear is how it affects women at the end of the day, not like this is garbage and we need good people regardless of sex. It's this is garbage. I can't really, I can't really deny it, but I'm bothered by the fact that people are noticing that women were involved in the creation of this garbage. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, all right, let's hear more of it. But that was
actually before we continue, I think I realized why I didn't pick it up. She has this very, very rapid fire way of talking that can be, you have to focus to be able to really hear her. Either that or the lowering of the collective IQ of women is impacting me suddenly.
We're changing gears to that now, are we?
No, I'm not changing gears. No gears changing.
All right.
Just aside that I'm just dropping a little like a hint, foreshadowing of a future topic. There we go.
Yeah.
And then I'll just let it slide away. But I do want to mention, if you want to send us a Super Chow, hey, the things, right? Please do so at feedthebadger.com/support. We get the full benefit of the funds that you send, and you get the benefit of sending your comment through a system that won't enhance it in mysterious ways, shall we say. And if you're on Exeter, which I think is working now on my own Twitter channel, I should probably check that actually.
X. It's just X, Allison. You don't have to do too many syllables. It says that it's going. So yeah. Okay,
good. All right, that's good. That's good. Then I fixed all of that. I fixed all of that. And it looks like it's showing my face now on the vertical. So maybe the whole switching is working too. That's good. All right.
I'm just doing it manually right now, just to make sure, because you're gonna probably do more talking than me anyway, so I don't really need it. And the other thing too is that if there's like any sound on your end or mine, it switches cameras. So I think that until I get that sort of refined,
actually, I'm just gonna do it manually. Not too bad. Like it's actually good to just have a little bit of visual difference sometimes during a rant, as long as the switch is fairly rapid and it doesn't like stick on one of us when we're not talking. I don't know if you can adjust sliders in the background and do stuff like that, but that's just my comment. I was thinking it was okay. Like if I say and then it flips to me like for a couple seconds and then goes back to you, I think that's okay. Because it's nice to know that there's someone there reacting to things in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Let me just see here. I can okay, so there is a way I can do this. Let me quickly set it up right now. So first I'm gonna have to lower my microphone.
Okay.
and then bring it up over here, and then bring yours up and lower the desktop audio to 0. Hold on, because the thing is, we're since we're using. Okay, would you say a few words? Let me just see.
Here are a
it's
few
working.
words.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
great.
good.
Oh, great.
And then,
Awesome.
yeah, but the problem is that the YouTube video, which we're watching, is on its own sound, and so I just got to make sure that that's working.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not, because normally it goes through the desktop, and that's where the challenge is at. So let me see. Hold on.
We'll get this.
Yeah. It'll just be no problem. Properties. Okay. So that is just audio. Oh, I know. Let me put the sources up first. Okay.
All right.
Now, okay. So now I see. Okay. So YouTube should. Yep, that one's got to go up, and I got to turn the desktop audio is all the way down. Okay. So it should work now. So let me just turn. Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Let's test run it. All right. Okay.
Yeah, it's doing it. Yeah. Okay.
Great.
So I will play the video some more. She goes right to Leslie Headland, and again use an image of Harvey Weinstein because he's scary. So let's continue the video.
I was wrong. Apparently, to some people at Disney, future was not soon enough. Cause baby, we're living out my worst nightmare. My worst nightmare being me feeling like I have to defend the very presence of my own hoo-ha if I want to come across as a creditable and brain-owning person when it comes to film. And all of this because of some privileged millionaire humanoid beings walking around in their $1 million gowns, in their $1 million mansions, with singular agenda to perpetually embarrass me.
She's a powerful leader. Yes.
Unfortunately, this discourse and the extent of its affected area has outgrown those very women themselves, since nowadays there are very many more additional facets to this conversation besides them being underqualified and incompetent. Even
Okay. Now, I think that there's some issues with what she's saying. Right? First of all, these women are like, this was what was going to happen. This entire construct is based on the idea that women are excluded, not because it's a merit-based system and they don't measure up, but because of some unfairness. And when you focus on arbitrarily advancing a group of people, you are going to, that it's ultimately going to end up degenerating into nepotism and advancing based on superficial characteristics rather than talent. So this is what was going to happen. And honestly, this is the entire problem with the narrative that women are excluded based on other factors besides merit, is that it will end up producing this. Trying to correct for it will end up putting women forward who don't have the chops to do the work. That's what you're seeing. And the problem, I don't know what she's going to ultimately propose as the solution, but the problem is handing a bunch of useless, not even mediocre, like tepid people with almost no talent, handing them a narrative that ratchets them up to the top of the stack of being able to control media products. Right? That is the problem here. The problem is the narrative. And if you don't like it, then you got to kick it out of your life. You have to be the change you want to see. And this is the point. This is the thing. This is what this narrative does. It doesn't actually benefit the average woman. It benefits the women who can manipulate these situations, and they're in positions of power or influence, and they can use that narrative that they so-called are advancing all women. They can use that narrative to force people to comply with and give them resources and influence and power and clout that they otherwise wouldn't have. And it's not about you. It's not about your enjoyment. It's not about creating good things. It's about advancing this narrative and gaining the benefit of these resources. They think they have the right to be in these positions because they are alpha women on top of this narrative. Like, and they are capable of manipulating this narrative. That's what makes them alpha women in their mind. So they have every right. It hasn't. And again, if you want to retain merit in media, you cannot allow this narrative that women are excluded to gain a foothold. Because once it does, everything reorganizes itself around nepotism, who you know, how much social power you have, the kind of clout you can get through self-righteousness and all of this other stuff. And the media becomes secondary. It becomes absolutely secondary. And I would honestly say that what we are seeing over and over and over again, when we see women take over these, and not just the women who put their heads down and work, because there have been in comic books throughout history, you know, in media throughout history, there used to be a huge amount of producers and directors, women in like the silent era. So, I mean, there have been women who have done the work and abided by the expectation of merit. The problem is the narrative gets in there and everything changes. Everything changes. Everything gets screwed up. And what happens is, again, merit is destroyed. It's gone. What do you think happens when something that is trying to create beauty or something that's trying to create entertainment loses all emphasis on merit? What do you think happens? This is what happens. And that is the result of this narrative that women are oppressed.
Yeah, you get Australian Olympic breakdancing. That's what you get.
That was just painful. Ugh.
I know, but here's the worst part. No one, and I know this is like an aside, but like nobody stepped in and said, "Look, you're gonna embarrass yourself because you're not good at this." Instead, everyone supported her unconditionally. They lit her into the stratosphere. Even the director or some like chairperson at the Olympic event said, "Oh no, we did this for her because one day she was crying in the corner because she was in a male-dominated, field breakdancing, and felt left out, like felt excluded," which is what we're talking about. And the unfortunate thing is, specifically with breakdancing literally was something that came out of the 80s, and it was a vehicle for boys in particular, though not limited to boys, but mostly boys, so that they could stay off the streets in terms of like joining gangs and stuff. That's why I was into breakdancing when I was 11 in Humboldt Park, west side of Chicago. It was my way of avoiding getting involved with gangs. So we would breakdance. So yeah, I mean, it's funny because it came into being as a vehicle to support boys. But now we're basically just saying, well, this girl should be allowed to do it no matter how awful she is. and it's embarrassing for her. I feel bad for her because nobody told her the truth. But anyway, I'm sorry. That's a digression.
Yeah, well, I wanted to speak on the breakdancing thing. You know that there were female breakdancers in the Olympics, right? Did anyone actually see the ones who won gold and silver? Because they were pretty good, as far as I can tell.
But though I heard that after this fiasco, they're actually not going to do breakdancing at the Olympics anymore. They canceled the entire, it's been removed from the entire event now. In the future, there won't be any more breakdancing.
But you see how that's actually destroying the women. Like, honestly, when I was watching the female breakdancing, and I'm not a breakdancing connoisseur, I was really impressed on what they were doing, right? Now, somebody who's watched male breakdancing might look at that and say, "eh." But I have noticed that women who are in like a featherweight category can really pull off a lot of that athleticism. It's almost like gymnastics to music, but really intent, like not gymnastics on a bar, but like trying to get your body up and do things while just suspending yourself on your hand or your head. I'm like, wow, that's pretty impressive. When I saw what she did, I had no context, so I just watched this woman do shrimping on the ground, and I'm like, is she doing like a warm up for an MMA event? like that reminded me of, and shrimping is basically trying to practice leg escapes, essentially. Like escapes from full mount, or even half mount, like but anyway. And so I was like, are you warming up, and is this the warm up for an MMA event? Because I recognize the shrimping, and I'm like, but that's a warm up, right? So that's what somebody's doing prior to an event. And then I found out
That's a dance move. Yeah.
it's a dance move.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
I mean, I think so. Like most of that looked like she made that up. But you know, the point is not that.
But she
The point
destroyed
is,
it. She destroyed it for the women who were actually, and you could tell that these women practiced and they made an effort, and she just destroyed the event for them. You know, that's the issue. It's like, okay, I'm going to go into a rant. I'm sorry, Brian. People say that women are, you know, they're subject to criticism, or they're subject to hazing or additional pushback when they enter these fields. They should be. Women should be subject to additional scrutiny when they enter fields based on merit, because women have the habit of taking a field based on merit and turning it into something where you're carving up the so-called resources instead of creating them through striving for merit. You actually come with this attitude that you get to, you're going there to get a piece of your pie, right? A piece of the pie. And that's what it is. And it's all about, well, whose need is greatest? Who gets the piece of the pie? So you end up inverting the meritocracy. So the worst end up getting the biggest amount of clout and influence, because you have decided to change it from a meritocracy where everyone's striving to be the best and you're ranked accordingly. And in that meritocracy, you're producing incredible work because you're striving to be the best. And you turn it into a situation where everybody is up at the buffet demanding their part based on their weaknesses. And so, yes, women should be scrutinized heavily if they want to enter any kind of merit-based activity. They should be scrutinized that they have the right mentality, because when they don't, they bring the narrative that the merit is discriminating against them, and they destroy the merit. And then they destroy the activity, and then they destroy everything good about it, and nobody gets it. Nobody gets the benefit of it. Even the women who earned gold and silver in breakdancing at the Olympics, they now no longer get to have a competition to compete in the future, because somebody got what she got and ended up she became the face of the goddamn sport because of pity, because she had a weakness and people wanted to give her something. And she discredited the whole thing as a result. And it's actually, the people I feel horrible for are the women who actually strived for excellence in that event. And now they get nothing from it. They get overshadowed by a dork who made it about her weakness, her inability, and how pathetic she was, and how much that was a ticket to get more than she was owed. Yeah, so they talk about hazing women when they try to get into a merit-based like art, writing, media, TV, animation, anything. They should be. In fact, women should have to work 5 times harder. What is it? The Muslim 3 women to every 1 man, 4 times harder. They should wait 5 times longer, and they should demonstrate 100% that they understand that they are there to bring merit, not victimhood. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting freaking tired of this. The destruction of beauty through this nonsense. Okay. I will step off my podium for you, Brian.
All right. Well, let's get to I want to get through the intro, and then I got a couple of. She basically has it broken up into a couple of small sections, just 3 main things. There's a section called overcorrection, one called overreaction, and then her conclusion. So I want to get through the intro, look a little bit of overcorrection, her claims about that, and then the other parts. So, all right, here we go. Oh, I did the thing.
Though before, with the things like She-Hulk, we were aimlessly teasing and shaking, now Pandora's box has been split wide open with a sledgehammer, and now there's chaos everywhere. There are women in Star Wars complaining that Star Wars is not feminine enough. I guess based on the statistical knowledge that Star Wars has predominantly male audience, behind the scenes, female producers are actively working to forcibly and artificially alter those statistics, intentionally or unintentionally, eliminating a huge chunk of its male audience, which causes male fans to feel obviously offended and violated by this, and all of this births an unfortunate discussion on whether or not women belong in the context of Star Wars, inside or outside of it, which gives women in charge of the franchise a better basis to conclude that all men are toxic sexists who never want to see a woman thrive. Did I miss anything? I probably
And that is the fucking point. They manufacture this, they manufacture
They create
their
the
own
conditions.
evidence.
Yeah.
They manufacture their own evidence to justify what they did in the first place. It's like they go in and they poke and they prod and they insult and they deliberately minimize and express contempt towards the male audience. And they're constantly poking and poking and poking and poking and poking and poking. And then understandably, the male audience is getting more and more pissed at being abused. And eventually they get so pissed that they lash back. And usually it's not even it's just a percentage of what they're getting from these people. And then the women go, what do? Oh, these men. Oh, they're so misogynist. I don't know why they would even do this to us. We're such oh, look at this is the violence inherent in the system, everyone. This is the violence inherent in the system, and it's like they construct the argument after they've made the argument, they construct the evidence to fit it. This is why we had to go in and do this, everyone. This is why we had to, because these men, they're just so horrible to women and they exclude. And it's like, I'm doing the whole, do you know the Monty Python and the search for the Holy Grail? Come and see the violence inherent in the system.
Yeah.
And it's after poking and poking and poking and poking and poking and poking and poking. And they finally get what they want, which is the response justifying what they did in the first place, supposedly.
Yep.
And I'm just going to leave it as a exercise for the viewer, how often this has occurred in their relationships with women.
Yep. All right, let's play some more of the video.
After the costly acquisition of Star Wars in 2012, it was evident that Disney was highly focused on making the franchise not only succeed but outdo itself in terms of numbers. The path was clear. If they wanted to heighten its consumption, as most capitalist companies do, they needed to enlarge and diversify their consumer market that was strictly dominated by a singular demographic. That's a very logical standpoint from a business perspective. Star Wars never had a problem with attracting male audiences, so it only makes sense that they would mainly target and make themselves appealing to parts of the population that has not before expressed that much of an interest in the franchise otherwise.
We are trying to grow in the workforce the number of women in executive positions and in all positions inside the company, and with the movies that we're making and with the protagonists that we're putting in the stories.
And even though I do believe it was the initial strategy of Disney, something changed during its implementation. Maybe because the political pressure on Disney worsened, or Lucasfilm grew too comfortable and familiar with telling empty female stories just for the sake of it. Soon enough, the franchise started shamelessly prioritizing its abstract potential viewers and their interests over the actual audience and their wishes.
First of all, the question becomes, was Star Wars made for men? Because this is the presumption. Just like any property, by the way. Like we can swap this out for another movie that people might associate with something that men are into. I talked to Allison, I mentioned Star Trek, which is, pretty nerdy, probably nerdier than I would say a lot nerdier than Star Wars, especially the Next Generation. But again was that when they made it, when they were sitting down with the writers and the showrunners or the film directors, George Lucas, whatever, were they like, we're making this thing for men? Because this is what is presumed by Kathleen Kennedy and Disney. When they took it, they said, oh, we already have a built-in audience because the brand appeals to men automatically. So we don't need to give them anything because they'll just consume the brand. But let's also if we make this appealing to women, we'll double the size of our customer base. We'll make it even bigger. Is that really a sound strategy? Alice, do you want to say anything?
Well, I am saying something. Is it a sound strategy to try to appeal to women? Well, it depends. First of all, no, I don't think it is a sound strategy. The story will appeal to the women it appeals to. I'm going to look into use another example. Writers. Male writers often have an audience that's half female, half male. And I don't think they specifically write to appeal to men. They just write what the stories that they want to read themselves, right? Or maybe they do write for an audience, but I don't think it's as explicit. But the thing is that female authors tend to have an 80 to 90% female audience. And I guess what they're trying to say is, and they've presented this as men somehow discriminate against women. So the male audience doesn't want to read women's stories, but the female audience will read men's stories. And that is presented as, I guess, the male audience discriminates against female authors. But I think it's more that the male writers don't exclude women as much as the female writers do. Female writers,
or the feminine perspective, maybe the female, because I think that male writers try to write women, and they try to do that. If they're good, they do it honestly. Mm-hmm. But maybe women don't try to write men, because what is men's? Way? Well, yeah, in a way that really brings out their humanity and makes them interesting and appealing, but not. It's not. And this is under the assumption that men want to read stories that feature men and women want to read stories that feature women, which I don't think is necessarily true. But setting that aside, mm-hmm. Maybe there is. So what I think is that the narrative that men are dangerous, harmful, potentially, bad for women, have oppressed them historically, whatever. I think it mm-hmm. has an influence over the way women write men, because they're writing it based in that perception. Even if they make a man that is not a villain, but maybe even a heroic man or a good man or whatever, I think that it has an effect on how they write them. And men, because that narrative is not real, it's not reality, men don't relate to that if it's written into fictional men, because they're I don't know guys like this. Mm. But I think that when men write women, they might have a little bit more grounding in what women are like, because there's no narrative, right? Mm-hmm. There isn't a narrative around women. So I wonder if that doesn't have an influence over, especially because if you're an artist, if you're a writer, you're kind of embedded in a more feminist framework. I mean, you've talked about how absolutely awful a lot of fiction is today, especially how misandrous it is when women write it. I think it's because women think that they're just writing reality, but mm-hmm. they're not. They're writing reality through the lens of the feminist narrative. So it just comes out, even if they don't mean it to be, it just comes out that way.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point. Yeah. The feminist lens on men actually is the exact opposite of sympathy, or the exact opposite of realizing that men might have a way of being that you can observe and accurately depict. If that makes sense, because it's there's no there with men. And once you get into this whole men oppress women for this, for their own benefit, and even the step further, which is standard feminist fare, which is men use violence and domestic violence and sexual assault to oppress women to create a culture that puts them first at the expense of women. Once you embrace that, essentially a man has the psychology of a sociopath, and sociopaths have a very, very simple psychology relative to normal people. And it's actually extremely easy to get a sociopath to just do things. Like their stimulus response is so simplistic that once you realize, it's fairly easy to get them to do really anything, just as long as you give them the right stimulus. So you have this very, very simplistic mentality, and that's what feminists project onto men. So there's no real complexity in their understanding of men. But the other thing is that correspondingly, the complexity in their understanding of women has a nosedive too, because you flatten it into those women who are complicit, so-called, with the patriarchy, and those who smash it. And that's the only real vector to understanding them morally. And, one of the most interesting things about people is are the principles that they try to live up to. In fact, that's sort of a lot of the reason why we like reading about people, is to understand their principles and their principles in action. But as you can see, when you flatten men into sociopaths don't really have principles. And then you flatten women into one pointillism when it comes to their principles. Do they support the sociopaths? I mean, we don't even need to call it men. It's, do they support the sociopaths or do they fight them? And those are the only principles that women can have. Like, that's it. So it's absolutely boring.
Yeah.
It's
and
just,
I think this goes back to like what you were just saying. You said that male writers tend to have a relatively even split in interest, which means that what they're writing for is not a sex. It's not down the lines of sex. They're not, men are saying, I'm going to write this for men or I'm going to write this for women. They're saying, I'm going to write this for fantasy fiction fans or science fiction fans or political, what do they call political thriller fans, like Tom Clancy, whatever. And so then it happens to be the case, depending on what that is, because if it's a man that writes romance, for example, and a lot of men write romance novels, right? They're probably going to have more women reading them because women like romance novels. And if it's a man who's writing a Tom Clancy style military thriller, then it's probably going to have more men reading it, maybe even overwhelmingly so. But they're not thinking about the sex of the reader. They're thinking about what interests them or what they're writing from, because a lot of times these guys that are these male writers, they have maybe they have a background that relates to what they're writing about. Maybe they were, they worked on a ship, or they were in the military or whatever, so they write about that. Women, I think, are more likely to write from the perspective of being a woman, but I think that goes back to the narrative, because women, I think that they're so bombarded with this thing, this patriarchal narrative, it ends up defining them. And so they see everything the same way, they end up projecting a lot. So when a male writer writes about something, the female writer just assumes that he's writing for boys, and that's because she's writing for girls. But that doesn't mean he is. He's probably just writing for people who are into pirates. And he's like, I like pirates, I'm going to write about pirates. So, and maybe the pirates are men, because they probably mostly were, but that doesn't mean it's for men. And that's why I think you get, like this more even split. I mean, like, superhero movies are appealing to men mostly, but a lot of women watch them, and there's a lot of like stuff for women in them. There's a lot of eye candy and stuff. Same thing goes for the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Those were popular with women as well. They loved Johnny Depp. They liked Orlando Bloom, right? So they got that out of it. Or they just like the story. They may have just gotten into like the story and the lore and all of that, and they just watched it. I think it was, probably more popular with men because we're just visual, I guess, in a way, because I think that women do more reading than men do. But yeah, like this, I guess what I'm getting at is ultimately the thesis of this video and all the discussion around this is that there is this idea that male creators or male artists create things with men in mind, like specifically. And it's just not true. I think it's just the absence of that from the female perspective makes it look like the males are doing it for men. But I don't think men write for men. I think men write for what they want.
Well, they write based on kind of meritocracy. They write based on action. They write based on goals. And that is going to, like, I also think that there's a certain element of, you know, women didn't just watch because they saw a role model in, for example, Leia, Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher. They watched because they thought Han Solo was hot, and part of what made him hot was the way that he dealt with
The
situations.
bad boy attitude that he
But
had.
also,
Yeah.
like, yeah, but also the, you know, his competency and that kind of stuff. So having, and this is the thing, I don't know if what these individuals are writing even appeals to women, and I'm guessing that the numbers are showing it doesn't. So, for example, I think it was the Marvels, that one
Yeah.
Marvel movie that was all women cast.
Huge failure.
Yeah, it was a huge failure. But what's interesting about the failure is that it actually had a higher male audience than female.
Yeah,
Even
mostly men
relative-
watched it. Mostly men
even
watched it.
relative
though-
to the
yeah, even though
Marvel.
they were told that it wasn't for them. It was still
Yeah.
what little money that movie made, most of it was still men's money. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like, but the thing is that it was men who watched it. Women stayed away from it even more than they had any other Marvel movie. It's from what I can remember of the statistics. So that movie, which was explicitly supposedly aimed at women, saw one of the lowest turnout of female audience members of a Marvel movie. And I think it's because this stuff isn't really aimed at women at all. It's aimed at pushing a narrative that supports certain types of women. And that what they're doing by changing all of this stuff is they're actually alienating the women who came for the stories that the men were making, or the women who were simply part of the meritocracy. They're alienating them. And one of the things is that there's this funny test where you can tell a property is really bad depending on how many fanfic, like erotic fanfics, are written about it. So if you go to like Archive of Our Own, or I think it's called AO3, and you look up the property to see if anybody's writing fanfic about it and it doesn't have any, then it's a bad property. And a lot of these properties that these women are making are bad properties because the thing is that fanfic is dominated by women. So they're not hitting, even if women go out and see this stuff, they're not investing in what these women are creating. And it's because it doesn't have that depth that what men and the women who abide by the meritocracy create. It just doesn't have the depth of plotting, the depth of characterization. It's just gone. And I think that the issue here is that the narrative, they say that it's for women, but it isn't, because it isn't producing things that women like.
Well, I think a really good story. So I think what men or people who appreciate the meritocracy, because I'm sure there are women like J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter books are appealing to men and women. So, you know, it's not like it can't be done. But I think that when if you're just writing for general audiences and you're not thinking about the female perspective necessarily or the male perspective necessarily, but you're putting stuff in there that essentially embodies the human universal condition, it will have everything that men and women want, and it'll be popular. So like Star Wars and Star Trek and the Marvel movies and Pirates of the Caribbean and Lord of the Rings, they're not successful because they're aimed at men, even though mostly men will watch them. They're successful because they embody something about the human condition that's universal. It's not gendered. So basically, the stuff that is supposedly for boys is actually for everybody, and the stuff that is supposedly for women is actually for very few if anybody. Because in order for it to like be for women, it has to exclude elements in it that are completely arbitrary, because the writer's like, well, that's a little bit too for men, so I'm going to get rid of that, even though women might like it too, because men and women probably like more of the same things about reality than not. And so you leave that out, and like it doesn't feel like it's for anyone, which is why it doesn't make any money except from the culture junkies.
Yeah, exactly. And well, I mean, War and Peace is another one that actually appeals to both men and women, because
Oh
it
yeah,
has
for sure.
war
Because
and it has peace.
it has war. Yeah. Well, it has, because I mean, like, it's not like men can't appreciate a good love story, but it has to. I think that it would be challenging. Like, what would you need to bring to a love story to get men to watch it? And I mean, there are plenty of them, because they're often in little ways, like in The Mummy, for example, which is like, I think it's a great movie. But I mean, Lindsay also thinks it's a great movie. Or what's another one? God, it's slipping. Casablanca, or some of these like like these westerns. Some of these westerns are extremely manly, but they have like the romance is an important part of it, because the man needs to know that there is a woman that will support him. Like, that's part of the romance, right? So if you're into, like I mentioned, Casablanca, Gone with the Wind, I think that those are movies men can get into for sure. High Noon, it's a really great Western. So but I don't think that we're writing at that level anymore. I think that the general quality of people's writing, those like classic Hollywood films, is just like, we're not anywhere near that. But hopefully, the only way that's going to improve, by the way, is I think if literature improves. So if literature improves, because I think it's also on the down slide. I mean, you probably know better than me. Yeah, it is, right?
Yes.
Yeah. If literature improves, then everything else will go with it: film, television, etc. It's so like the problem is now literature is absolutely in the toilet, and a lot of this has to do with some of the elitist gatekeeping that goes on there. I just learned about some guy who was like part of this. Do you remember the Hugo Awards? So he was like on the board or something, but because he had the wrong kind of politics, he got kicked out. But he was like a great writer. I don't remember his name though. But I mean, like, it's stuff like that. So like, if literature improves, if writing improves, then I think television and film will improve. Because the only good television on now is, most of it is stuff that's based on something written that's kind of like older. So just my 2 cents.
That's true. The editor that I've been working with has said that a lot of the stuff that she sees has exactly the same plot over and over again, which means incidentally, if you have the same plot over and over again, that means you basically have the same characters over and over again, because a lot of characters revealed through action, which is a component of plot. So basically, she's just seeing the same story over and over and over again, like a Xerox copy, getting worse and worse and worse.
Yep.
But yeah, let's should we watch a little bit more of
Yeah,
this?
let's watch some more of this.
Actually, if you guys want to send us a message, feedthebadger.com/justthetip.
Did we get one?
I don't know. Let me see.
I do. We do.
Yeah, we did.
Okay. Yeah. So Great Indoors sent a Super Chow. And he gives us $5 and says, Brian, I finally made a Rumble account after Teal Deer posted a comment on the previous live stream. I was planning to watch HBR live on Rumble, but alas, no stream. What's up with that? No love for Rumble Chan. Well, this isn't technically a Badger show. This is on Allison's channel, but she wanted to put a little vertical stream out on Badger live streams as well. So this isn't actually, well, I mean, she would understand it better, but that's why it's not on Rumble, it's not on Twitch, it's not on Facebook, and it's not on the Honey Badger Twitter page or X page. So, but thank you for the Super Chow anyways.
So it's a Slim Badger, this one.
This is a Slim Badger, yeah. A vertical Badger. Okay, but anyway, back to the video. Let's play some more. Ooh, I jumped ahead. I didn't mean to do that. Okay.
As most capitalist companies do, they needed to enlarge and diversify their consumer population that has not before expressed that much of an interest in the franchise otherwise.
We are trying to grow in the workforce a number of women in executive positions and in all positions inside the company, and with the movies that we're making and with the protagonists that we're putting in the stories. So,
And even though I do believe it was the initial strategy of Disney, something changed during its implementation. Maybe because the political pressure on Disney worsened, or Lucasfilm grew too comfortable and familiar with telling empty female stories just for the sake of it. Soon enough, the franchise started shamelessly prioritizing its abstract potential viewers and their interests over the actual audience and their wishes. From the get-go, the mere concept of fixing Star Wars was already a huge cause for alarm, and not because of the presence of females, but because it heavily suggested and established that Star Wars was flawed to begin with, disowning and insulting the entire fanbase's taste, intelligence, and morality. This is what initiated the foundational gap between the two genders when it comes to Star Wars, and it...
Yeah.
And again, the female audience isn't served by this. It's like, in a softer way, it's what I saw with the sexual, like the domestic violence and sexual assault. Like there's sort of an industry around dealing with people who have been victims of it. And feminists went in with their narrative and they changed everything, and now it serves no one but feminists. So, because it basically has turned that issue into a battery farm for feminists developing clout and money. Like they literally have turned female victims into cattle for their grift. You know, there's nothing else to call it. And the reason why I say that is that they're not serving anyone. Those are literally not serving anyone. That they get huge amounts of money, and it ends up the amount of stuff that they do with that money is minuscule. It's like the entire industry has just become a way for feminists to have $500,000, $100,000, $500,000 salaries a year, and they don't do anything with it, or they do so little just to justify it. And then they do all kinds of accounting. I've seen the numbers. I've looked at these organizations. They're ridiculous in their ratio of actual salary to productivity. Like it's mind-boggling. And they're taking all this money for supposedly to help women who are experiencing sexual assault and domestic violence, and they don't. Instead, what they put this money towards is themselves and manufacturing statistics that basically turn these social issues into the perfect sales pitch, which is you're saving women because men are targeting women because they're women. And it's like, that's the perfect sales pitch. It opens up wallets. It gets this stream of money in. And it also makes everybody say, oh, we gotta do something. That means we gotta submit to whatever the feminists say. That's exactly what they want, is the money and the clout. And they are creating something that does not serve female victims of anything, because they're not looking at the total, like all the evidence. You can't solve a problem when you're excluding like 1/2 to 3/4 of the evidence. How the heck do you solve it? And they've explicitly, like I have evidence that feminists have explicitly chosen to ignore solutions in favor of promoting their ideology. So they're explicitly choosing. So they're not just marginalizing male victims. They're not just marginalizing male fans. They're constructing something that doesn't even serve female victims or female fans. Like it is actually really sort of horrifying. But honestly, you understand it when you understand that these women are likely, a lot of them are sociopaths, and or at the very least they're narcissists, or at the very least they are absolutely Machiavellian, and they have no interest in helping other women, just like sociopathic men don't have any interest in helping other men. They just want power and clout for themselves. You know, and this is like, that's just it. Like, I'm sorry they got into your fandom, but they got into your fandom. And if they got into your fandom, you may have to do a little bit of soul searching about what happens when someone says to you, oh, women are oppressed. Do you say, okay, proof? And what's the situation for men? And, oh, that seems really odd because the men in my life they've been very helpful, or that seems odd because the human race could only have gotten to this point in time with the cooperation of men and women. Or do you say, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense, because that's how they get in. That's the means by which they enter your everything. It's the means by which they entered services for survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence, and they completely controlled it. They control the narrative to promote more feminism. It's the means by which they got into this, and they keep doing it over and over again, and people still just look at this and they let this process happen because they don't want to challenge this whole construct of men oppress women. And yet this is the thing that keeps destroying everything. I mean, it's going to destroy everything. This concept, I mean, it's destroyed services for domestic violence and sexual assault victims that they don't really exist in a way that's really serving those victims. The police in Canada have started to kick that stuff out because it's putting women in more danger, and trying to get away from that because it's putting women in more danger. And they see it on the ground. And I've seen this on the ground, putting women in more danger. Of course, it puts men in danger. But since everybody doesn't really give a crap, you have to point out that it puts women in danger. Like, this stuff is not helpful. And they will take it and they will destroy this service. They will destroy this fandom. They will destroy this industry. They'll destroy this NGO. And when they're got through with everything, they're going to destroy our civilization. And it will be because that's the attitude they have. They do not see it as a system that needs to be maintained in and of itself through merit, through sacrificing for this, through dealing with the crappy jobs, the linemen, the sewer workers. No, they don't see it that way. They see it solely in terms of being something that's being unfairly withheld from them, and they deserve all of the spoils. And they are going to destroy everything getting them. And then when they've destroyed everything getting them, they're going to blame men.
And the Nutsa who made this video, I don't know if you noticed, but you kind of basically said what happened, what went wrong, which is essentially Disney bought Star Wars, and then people like Kathleen Kennedy said Star Wars needs to be fixed, so we have to change it so that it's more inclusive or less sexist or whatever it is. And this is how these people operate. Enter a space, problematize the space, call it sexist, misogynist, problematic, whatever, and do it over and over until you control it. And then whatever happens after that doesn't matter, because now you're the one that's in charge. You'll probably just like a vulture pick at the corpse of the thing until there's nothing left, and then move on, and then problematize something else. So, I mean, this is just the operating procedure of these people. And you admitted it in the video when you said they thought that they were fixing something, and it was like there was nothing to fix. So why didn't people speak up immediately and say, what are you talking about? Like this franchise printed money once upon a time. All you had to do was what George Lucas did. You stick to the sort of like ancient formula, and you don't oversaturate the market, and you just like give people a taste every so often, and it'll just make money. But they did the opposite of all of those things. So anyway, all right, I got a Super Chow and I got some Super Chats. I'm going to read them really quick. So Richard Beer gave us $5 and says, to be fair, how many of these crappy screenplays are already an adaptation of the erotic fanfic of an established property that has a writer self-inserted into the fanfic? Well, all roads lead to Twilight, if that's what you mean. Yes.
Yeah, and that's the problem.
Wait, I saw a really funny video. Oh man, I gotta find it. It was from a while ago. It was really funny. It was called Every Young Adult Novel Ever, and it was a woman like narrating that she's like, and it's like every single trope of the young adult novel where you have a female protagonist and she's like a plain Jane, and but she's got this special gift, and like she's in a dystopian future that's like run by, you know, like a patriarchal system, and she has to like fight against it with her gift, and there's like two men and she can't decide between the both of them. It's like, yeah, this is every young adult, look it up on YouTube. I think it's called every YA novel ever. And that's kind of what they are. I think they all come out of what was the website where people would write their fanfics? Was it Tumblr?
Archive of Our Own, AO3
okay.
or fanfic.net. Although I think that might be more defunct now. But yeah, to the person who said that this is all, yeah, and that's the problem. It's derivative of derivative of derivative. And also, women don't really like feeding on the sloppy seconds of other women. Like they want this nice plump, I don't know, mastodon, you know, and they want to be able to carve off their chunk. They don't want to, you know, pick out mastodon pieces from some other woman's poo, you know, and that's essentially what's happening. Is the original plump mastodon was Star Wars, as envisioned by Lucas and all of the other merit-based producers that were working at the time. And women chew off they carve off their chunk and they make their mastodon stew, which is basically fanfic of it, and they share it amongst themselves. But now we don't have the mastodon anymore. We just have the derivative works, the fanfic. So where are the women going to carve off their nice plump juicy bit of mastodon? They can't. So they just have to sort of scavenge from other women's poo. And they're not liking it, which is why they don't create fanfics out of it. It's just lost any kind of nutritive value. It isn't that you can't make anything out of it because it's somebody else. It's some other woman's leavings at this point. You get what I'm saying? It's like they have to go through the slop bucket. Maybe the better way to put it is they now have to go through the slop bucket of another woman. So instead of getting their own chunk of mastodon from the original property, they have to go through the slop bucket of another woman. And they don't like it. So they don't do it because there's nothing really there that you can make anything out of. And that's the thing. Like there's a certain depth and quality and layeredness to the original Star Wars. And the older I get, the more I actually appreciate the storytelling it represents. But they take that, and when they turn it into something, they are reducing the potential of it. And you can't do anything further with something with such a reduced potential. Does that make sense? They're flattening it. They're turning it into something that appeals to their particular fetishes or interests. And they are in the process extracting all the value to themselves, but they're not leaving value to anyone else. Right? Because they just don't have the merit. They don't have the chops. And the other thing is that if we want to go deep, okay, prepare your scuba gear because I'm going deep now. The problem with female creatives, and this is something that it can be overcome if it's recognized, but there is a greater difficulty for female creatives to have an other to sort of like extend themselves to understand. It's like having a muse, right? You extend yourself to understand the muse. You strive to appeal to the muse. It's almost like a courtship behavior. You know, men do this courtship. In fact, I won't get into that because I can't remember the exact site, but there was a philosopher who explicitly said that when men are doing science or they're doing art, they're engaging in a kind of courtship, like a courtship of the atom, a courtship of the painting, a courtship of the song, and what that represents. So they're constructing this stuff because it's a kind of courtship, except a courtship directed towards an abstract quality. Well, women aren't encouraged to develop the ability to court at all. So when they come to a creative endeavor, they sort of have very atrophied skills when it comes to the feeling of courtship, the sacrifice of courtship, the feeling of striving for the object of your affection. They don't have that. They don't understand it as much. So, and I'm not saying that they can't, but they don't bring that to their creative endeavors, which is why often they lack something. You know, they lack a depth, they lack a passion, a striving. And it's more about the woman getting her bag out of it rather than sacrificing for the abstract idea of beauty or truth or something. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
And that's
think
real
it's
deep.
I think
But
yeah, I mean, I think that maybe one of the reasons why the Harry Potter books were successful is because of J.K. Rowling's personal experience. Wasn't she homeless at some point, and she
yeah,
was like really having a struggle? So I think that I don't know. I know what you're saying. I think that it really is a challenge. I don't think it's impossible. I got to read through these super chats, but someone named Saint Therese Taylor said, "I'm not understanding why we women can't create our own original stories. Am I missing something here? Don't most male heroic stories follow the same narrative? Maybe I'm missing context for this." Well, yeah, I mean, the hero's journey is kind of like a pattern, but like most men are fine with that. I don't know if it's because maybe women need something unique every time, like some, or some twist or whatever. I don't know. I mean, when you look at The Acolyte, which wasn't successful, but maybe women like it. But one of the things they liked about it was there was like this taming of the bad boy thing. So maybe that's what they want. That's kind of like every romance novel ever. There's like but I can't really say because I'm not a woman. So, but thank you for the comment. Go ahead, Allison. What were you gonna say?
where's the comment? Oh,
It was just a comment. Saint Therese Taylor. Yeah, it was in the
I
vertical
don't know.
stream.
Like women do create their own original stories. They have in the past, but the problem here is that the framework that they're using to analyze character, the feminist framework, massively decreases character. Like if you're trying to promote this idea that men are oppressors and women are oppressed, that's you lose the whole concept of character. But then the other thing is, again, that muse doesn't exist for women in the same way when you look through the world through that lens, because it defies the idea that women have to extend themselves to understand men. First of all, men are incredibly simplified in that framework. And second of all, if a woman does extend herself to regard men as her muse, she's a pick-me. She's supporting the patriarchy and whatever else. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Yeah.
Let's
All right.
shall we listen to a bit more?
Well, let me read the super chats that I got, because I got some super chats. So Senior Sticks gave us $2 and says, "It doesn't exclude women. Ladies are not the focus." He's talking about Star Wars, I think. Thank you. J.O. Bales gives us $1.99 and says they are choosing the bear. And then Albert Nader Retro gives us $5 Canadian and says, I can actually display that one, so hold on. Kathleen Kennedy, where Iskan Oswald when you really need one. Star Wars has over 150 novels. How do you screw up a paint by numbers? Same with Marvel. Well, because all of the books that came out, the expanded universe stuff, it wasn't female focused. Yes, there are female protagonists, but you have to understand that this is something that I don't think the maker of this video brings up. There's a tremendous amount of ego involved in this Disney Star Wars thing. Kathleen Kennedy wanted to leave her mark. She wanted to like make it a tremendous, as tremendous, if not more of a tremendous impact on the property as George Lucas. And that for her, she was completely ego invested in it. I mean, you could even argue that Rey is her self-insert in the Force Awakens or the sequel trilogy. So that's what I think. I'm pretty sure that that's true. I think that this is the reason why they didn't use any of the expanded universe stuff, even though there was plenty of good material there to draw from, was because that means that it wouldn't be their ideas. So, all right. Anyway, back to the video.
Did, in fact, come from Lucasfilm itself, not from men, not from women, not from fans. And in hindsight, it was a complete rework of the very foundation of the franchise. Star Wars at its core has always been a family soap opera that in spare time dove deep into the philosophy of morality and timeless political concepts such as democracy and imperialism, things that are very much universal and unisex. Whereas now, through the rebrand, its core values have shifted onto the importance of girlbossery and representation of male nipples on modern screens. Their nauseatingly blatant political strategy to rewrite the history and verbally push Star Wars as something non-feminine.
Because I feel like Star Wars is very like patriarchal, so it was kind of cool to have like this sort of woman-centered figure.
Is itself responsible for creating the narrative that Disney itself
Literally, Princess Leia was like the general. Like, When her planet blew up, I assume she was no longer a princess because there's nothing to be a princess of if the planet's gone. So she became like general or the leader of the rebellion or whatever. She was just like, so yeah, she was already the leader. But of course, people don't care about that stuff. You know, like there's no point in pointing that stuff out. Albernated Retro gave us $2 Canadian and says she left her mark all right, a skid mark. Thank you for that. Yeah, perhaps, but they still own the property, and there are still people who will defend it. So anyway, back to this. I'm gonna watch some more. I want to get to. There's a great bit in this video where another woman that worked on the original Star Wars trilogy she's like the opposite of Kathleen Kennedy. So I want to play that because that's good. That's good.
Itself is so adamantly swearing to be battling the idea that Star Wars in its initial form is not made by women, nor was meant or made for women. Not only falling short when it comes to holding an intellectual discussion, but feeding into highly damaging and fabricated idea that Star and frustrating misreading of Star Wars as something dominantly masculine, made for male audience. Star Wars having swords and spaceships in it, but that is a highly superficial and damaging take on both masculinity and Star Wars that George Lucas himself would find personally insulting.
That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, no offense to that.
No, I mean, like to presume that because it has spaceships and lasers, that means that it's for men. I think that is a limiting and superficial analysis. But feminists make this claim all the time. They think that the stuff that men like about media is superficial. Therefore it's inferior. It's less sophisticated. And what women like is more sophisticated, but I mean, it's probably about the same for both. But yeah, this is the presumption. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Well, there's sophisticated work that appeals to men, and there's sophisticated work that appeals to women. Right? And I mean, I don't know if I think that the idea that women are sophisticated is because I don't know, they deal more with emotion, and the stories that tend to resonate have a very strong emotional core. But action also deals with emotion. It just deals with very visceral emotion, the life and death, the question of life versus death, and the question of striving. It's more of a performance kind of thing because the hero has to overcome something. And with women's fiction, it tends to be that the hero overcomes something more internal, which I guess has been defined as being more sophisticated. Except I think that people who can balance the internal and the external are probably the most sophisticated writers.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you're right. I think that what women like to see are relationship dynamics. It's just stuff that draws them in. And I think men like it too, but they're not quite as stimulated by it. But I also think that women like to see action too. I mean, action movies appeal to everybody, but probably more to men. But I mean, if it has, like I said, if there's like a really cool or interesting relationship dynamics playing out, I mean, women get sucked right in. That's why soap operas are so popular with women, for example, because it's all relationship dynamics. It's all, and then of course they're really exaggerated. Like people are getting divorces and disappearing, and like all kinds of weird stuff happens in soap operas, but they're just really, really exaggerated. But I think that's what women like about them. So, or what's the anime shit that women like a lot? What is it? Not the pornographic stuff, but like the Fruits Basket,
Shonen.
A show. Is it called? No, Shonen is the boys.
No. Shoujo.
Shoujo. Yes. And what is that? I mean, I don't even know what that
Slice
is.
of life, emotional
I'm
stuff.
honestly, slice of life stuff. Yeah, for sure.
I've watched some of it. Yeah, I mean, the Japanese in general, like their storytelling, they're particularly good at capturing emotion, I find. for us, we seem to like a lot of more character development, if that makes sense. Whereas they tend to have more emotional moments as being the big draw. Um, and but yeah, shoujo does tend to focus more on emotional moments. There can be some action in it, but then again, I find that seinen, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Seinen.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
actually has a lot of emotion in it too. Like a lot of painful emotion. So I'm thinking right now about Golden Kamuy or Camus.
Kamui.
And
Kamui.
Kamui. Yeah, maybe it's Golden Kamui. I'm terrible with names, but yeah, it follows the exploits of sort of a shell-shocked veteran of one of the wars, the wars between Japan and Russia. And he there's this scene in particular I'm thinking about where he comes back to his hometown, and he had a girl that, like a girlfriend back home, right? And she was actually blind, so she wouldn't be able to identify him except by like sound. And when he comes home, he comes back to her, and she basically can't identify him, and is talking about how he smells of death. And it's just this really horrible scene. So because she no longer recognizes him and no longer can have that connection with him, I think he tries to promote one of his friends having a relationship with her. And then I think the story starts out or kicks off that he's trying to find the gold to repair her eyesight, probably so that she can identify who he is. Because apparently he's now so connected in her mind with the battlefield. And it's actually a concept that, if you think about it, is really painful. It's got a really deep kind of aching pain to it. And I've seen that in a lot of okay, I'm gonna need you to pronounce the word there, Brian. Seinen.
Seinen. I think it's pronounced seinen. Seinen.
Yeah, like this kind of
Seinen.
this kind of sorrowful quality to the writing that's really deep. And so I mean, I think men can write that stuff perfectly fine.
Well, JoJo is a seinen. It was a shonen for the first. Yeah, it was a shonen for the first 5 parts or so. After that, because Araki wanted to like make it more, he wanted to explore more mature, themes. He like they qualify it as a seinen. Parts 7 especially is it's very good. But anyway, just my typical, like, I'm not a weeb, but I love JoJo. So okay, but anyway, we should watch some more. I did get another super chat really quick. Albernator Retro gives us $5 Canadian. It says Star Wars was made for entertainment and with the hope of financial success. It's appealing to males more is coincidental. Yes, we addressed that. We said that it was made for general families, really, and it was so. In order, if you're going to do something aimed at families, you have to have something for mom, dad, and the kids. And Star Wars, it checks all the boxes. It's got everything. So anyway, let's go back to the video.
Star Wars, its philosophical core was just as masculine as it was feminine.
There's nobody like Carrie. Very few women could carry off the particular kind of strength that she had. I did not want to put strong and wise and a leader, and at the same time, young.
The core concepts introduced and explored in Star Wars are universally equally relatable to everyone invested in good storytelling. The hero's journey, the family dynamics, friendships, romance, politics, magic. Heck, the entire basis of the Skywalker saga is the tragic romance between the two main leads being way too passionate for its own good. How is that purely a masculine concept? Not to mention the fact that
Oh, this is the good part. Yeah, there's a woman here, pictured here, who actually was more involved with, or what, like she's more involved with the production than people realize. So I'm gonna play this bit because I thought it was pretty good.
By Marcia Lowe Lucas, an editor of all 3 original films. Some go as far as to argue that she was some kind of secret weapon of George Lucas at the time, and the sole reason why after their divorce, George Lucas's contributions to Star Wars never felt the same. Of course, these theories are far-fetched, but they correctly underline the impact this woman had on shaping Star Wars as we love it. But you will never hear feminists at Disney or Lucasfilm emphasize her name or her contributions, will you? Maybe it's because instead of competent female professionals, they only exclusively care for whatever and whoever panders and fits their intended narrative.
Young filmmakers, especially young women, ask me, if I want to become a filmmaker, what do I do? I'm always like, when that happens, say yes. Don't say, I don't know how to make a movie, because men don't say that. Dudes roll out of film school, throw on a Spielberg hat, and go, I know everything that I'm doing. And the reality is that you can do it. Like, you just have to have the confidence to walk in there and pretend.
What a bunch of bullshit.
I knew you were going to say that.
An absolute bunch of bullshit. You know, the real difference is a man may say that, but then he's expected to show it. So he knows that if he says, oh yeah, I can do this thing, he's going to be spending every night up at 4 learning how and doing doing the kind of thing they call dedicated learning, like a dedicated practice or focused practice, something like that. And he's going to be devoting to doing that so he measures up, which is why they often pull it off. But the other thing is that if they don't, they get kicked out. Does that happen with you? If you don't pull it off and you're a woman and you're there because someone said, we need a woman, are you going to be kicked out? No, because you're there because they need a woman, not somebody who can do the job. So you're not. You're just going to sit there failing. And people are going to say, wow, that was amazing. Because the same way that you say when a 3-year-old paints with fingers, you say, wow, that's really amazing. Because at least they're trying, right? Yeah, at least they have an interest. At least they have a passion. But it isn't really amazing. What's amazing is that they're there and they're trying. And that's what these women get. They get people saying, wow, that's amazing. You're here and you're trying really hard. That's so cool. That's pat, 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 pat.
Break dancing.
Cute break dancing, exactly. But men know that if they say they're going to do something, they say they're able to do something, they damn well better learn it. Learn how to do it, or they're going to be out the door. They're going to lose that opportunity. They're aware of that. Okay? So this is not the same. I mean, it would be the same if you say, well, just say yes. Say yes. Oh, I don't know how to make a movie. Just say yes. Well, you got to learn. That's a lot of learning, though. I'm pretty sure there are very few men who got just put into the director's chair. But I don't know. I've never done anything. Well, we just need a warm body in the director. I don't think that happens for men. So saying that, oh, this is something that happens. Yeah, there's no affirmative action for men. They don't get plucked out of nowhere and put in director's chairs. All right. Or they have to have some serious connections to be in a position like that. But it's like, so this scenario doesn't even, on its surface, it has several issues with it. One, men will say they're able to do something, and if they aren't able to do something, they will learn it because they know that they will have to be able to do it at some point, or they're out the door. Okay? They may float by, but eventually they'll be out the door if they don't learn it. And 2, I don't think that this is an accurate appraisal of how men end up in director's seats. They just randomly choose a dude. Oh, you're our affirmative action hire, Mr. White cis het male. No, they're going to have accomplished something to be put in that chair in the first place. So your whole attitude of, oh, well, I was just plucked out of nowhere and dumped in a director's chair. I don't know. So I should just say, yeah, I can do it. Yeah, that's wrong. You're in a situation only women can be in, which is that you are manifestly unsuited for the position you're in, and you're in it because you're a woman. And there is no way to get around that because you made those rules and now you live by them. And the empress's clothes. The empress has no clothes, right? Nobody's going to tell you. Nobody's going to tell you, because the reason why you're there isn't because of your talent. It's because of your your coochie. That's it.
Coochie. All
yeah,
right.
your cooch is your coach.
I just wanted to point out that this is, I don't know if you know, but this is Leslie Headland. She was the showrunner for The Acolyte and former personal assistant to Harvey Weinstein, who is one of the most powerful producers in all of Hollywood. So probably got the job because of who she knows. I'm just like saying that you have to fake it till you make it is really rich, coming from somebody who was like maybe even literally in bed with Harvey Weinstein, but at least figuratively, like, in terms of their professional relationship. So I think it's rich, but I wanted to show you, because I know we've been going for a little bit, but I wanted to hear the words by George Lucas's ex-wife and her thoughts on the sequel trilogy and how upset she was.
I've been
like,
drifting. I've been drifting around. Like, I don't know if you noticed.
Oh, I know.
That.
You're moving. Yeah, I noticed that.
Slowly.
Okay, thanks for adjusting, because I was afraid to tell you, because if you would have touched your phone, I don't know, like some, distant small city in Guam might have just like exploded because of the butterfly effect. I don't know.
Well, thank you for telling me. Thank you for correcting me. I just I gotta learn how not to drift. I think I'm back in the right location.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. You're good.
Okay.
I'm gonna play the video now.
How to do it.
And
How to do
emphasizing
it.
that Star Wars was built by a strong woman would discredit their fabricated historical
this is
record of
another
being
thing.
the most oppressed.
What?
This is another thing I've noticed about feminists. They scrub history of women. They it's unbelievable. It's insane. But you watch them do it. It's like they first of all, they scrub the history of women who are not doing men's roles, or tangentially, like they scrub the history of Norse weaver women. They scrub the history of Renaissance princesses. They scrub history constantly. I really freaking hate it when they scrub history around things like a House of Dragons or Game of Thrones, because get this, democracy has yet to produce as many female heads of states as monarchy did. Okay? So those times, they would probably be more used to a female head of state. And yet it's still presented in House of Dragons as like some kind of foreign concept. I mean, really, ultimately, the whole main conflict of House of Dragons is between the Queen Dowager and the Queen Regnant, which is the queen who rules by her own right. But the thing is that, why is it that important that a queen rule by her own right, when there was a point in time in European history, you couldn't swing a cat without hitting a queen who was ruling because her son was not yet ready to rule, and or ruling through soft power through being a consort. Like, yeah, it's not that big a deal that women are excluded from the official position, because they get things done, and everybody knew at the time that the queen consort had incredible power, or the queen who ruled, the queen regent had incredible power, right? They all knew that. They all knew who was the power.
You're drifting.
Oh, sorry. Am I, which way do I need to go?
You're good. You're good.
All right, this way. Okay, so they all knew, like, this was a common knowledge. So it's not even that big a conflict. Rhaenyra could have easily waited and gotten in power the old-fashioned way and had all the power she needed. But because we don't actually look at the situation of women throughout history, because feminism is busy scrubbing it, they're busy literally sacrificing our history as women to their narrative in the name of women. Don't think so. No, that's not true. And this is you're seeing it in real time when it comes to Star Wars. When it's inconvenient to their narrative, women don't exist, which means that they are removing women's achievement throughout history, even as in feminine spheres. Well, first in feminine spheres, but also in masculine spheres. They're removing women's achievement throughout history because it doesn't fit the narrative of oppression, which they find very useful. So once again, it is women who end up, I mean, it's men, of course, primary victims. I'm not going to deny that. But women also end up being victims of feminist theory because they get erased. Okay.
And this woman she's probably a feminist herself. So it wasn't just women that get erased. I think probably she was.
Well, yeah, probably. You're probably right.
Yeah. But
I mean,
it
was a time when women who wanted to do this kind of stuff, I think they thought they needed to be feminists. So it was more like maybe because it offered them like a psychological buffer or something, so they could get through whatever. But I don't know if they're exactly the same as the feminists. It's survivorship
I don't think
bias.
it's like today, but I'm just saying, like, she probably at her input may have had come from that a little bit, but it was probably, she was more measured, I guess. I don't know. Well, but let's get her the video clip here.
And disqualified members of the franchise. Also, maybe it's because they're threatened by Marsha's big set of balls, which ironically enough outsize the ones decorating her ex-husband.
I liked Kathleen. I always liked her. She was full of beans. She was really smart and really bright. Really wonderful woman. And I liked her husband, Frank. I like them a lot. Now that she's running Lucasfilm and making movies, it seems to me that Kathy Kennedy and J.J. Abrams don't have a clue about Star Wars. They don't get it. And J.J. Abrams is writing these stories. When I saw the movie where they killed Han Solo, I was furious. I was furious when they killed Han Solo. Absolutely, positively, there was no rhyme or reason to it. I thought you don't get the Jedi story. You don't get the...
Yep.
Okay. It was shock. And this is another thing. This is okay. Men have their kind of salacious content and women have their salacious content. And I think, and it's not, I'm not saying that this is that, let me put it this way. The Man Show with women jumping on trampolines. Yeah. That is to men what this kind of salacious content is to women. It is not the sum total of what men do. This is not the sum total of what women do, but it is the sum total of what women do when they're doing, the Jack Ripper thing, that kind of thing. This is what women do when they're
You're talking about Jack Tripper. You're talking about? Are you talking about
Jack Tripper from
No, I thought it was Cindy that did that. The roommate girl, Cindy did that. Not she was like the blonde. No, it was the blonde. It was the blonde girl that did the snort. Yeah.
Well, it's the snort, but I'm talking about Jack Tripper's. It's like mocking men, when they're doing they're watching the whole jumping on the trampoline thing.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But women do it too. Right. Yeah, women do it too. They have that same, thing. Like when a dog is like snuffling another dog's pee or poop or something, that kind of thing. It's like this kind of real base being drawn to something totally base. And women have it. I'm not saying that it defines women's creativity, but also women don't get called out on it. Like people don't go around saying, lady, start moving your thought. Like stop thinking with your ovaries or your cooch and start moving those thoughts upward, to try to develop true sophistication. And what women do when they're thinking with their ovaries is they do things like true crime stuff, except fantasy, like the stuff in Game of Thrones, where in particular Ramsay Bolton, which is a character who's one of the lords, it turns into like a serial killer, torturer, rapist, and rapes Sansa. And they do stuff like that. And it's just low, salacious content. And it appeals to the lowest common denominator in women. And what's really fascinating is women who are doing this will turn around and say it's sophisticated. And I'm like, no, I see through you. That's not sophisticated. Sophisticated requires thinking with the lobes, not the thing in the center, you know? And people don't call them out on it. And they don't say, no, actually, this is just primitive female content. Just like, and I'm not saying it's necessarily bad. Like, you know, soap operas can be very fun. They're very emotional. You know, that's the kind of note they're hitting. Watching women bounce on trampolines, you know, it has its appeal, right? You know, there's a reason why you do it. But I don't think men are going to come around and say, no, this is high art. You know, this is haute. You know, this is a commentary on human, you know, the contradictions of being. They're not going to do that. They're just going to say, I like watching boobies bounce. And women get away with presenting the most gratuitous, like salacious, equivalent of boobies bouncing content.
Yeah, it was
that's sophisticated.
It was on this show. Like, so Star Wars has never really been sexual. I think the closest thing was the Slave Leia stuff, but that was brief. If anything, that was like in one scene, and it was about as sexual as the show got. Like, even what is it in the prequel trilogy? I think at one point Natalie Portman's shirt is ripped and you can see her midriff a little bit, and that's it. But like, granted, people remember those scenes, like, but it wasn't like salacious in the way that was in The Acolyte, where there's literally a scene where a guy, like, you know, undresses, gets naked to get into like a lake, and the girl watches, you know, from the side. And of course, and Leslie Headland said that, you know, she was being, you know, horny when she wrote that, like that was on purpose. So there's obviously exploitative in a way. Of course, I don't care as a man, like whatever, but it's obviously tonally, it's really different from the old movies. So, but anyway, back to this. I jumped up to the next part because, I mean, we've been going for a little while and I want to wrap it up, but let's see.
It's a symptom of a bigger problem rather than its cause, because it takes both old and new Star Wars as a product at its face value. In reality, there is no masculine and feminine here. There was just Star Wars that was well written, and here is Star Wars that is not. There were great storytellers that cared for the story, and here are the ones who don't give a fuck. And also implying that Acolyte or any new Disney product is bad because of the female perspective is also highly insulting to the very idea of femininity itself, since, you know, The Way the Room is one of the worst and weirdest depictions of masculinity and male experience.
Anyway, how is your sex life?
As a woman, I can confirm that's how Acolyte is for the female experience. They're intentionally...
Wait, is that true? Is The Room a masculine film? I never thought of it that way. Allison, you're drifting again.
No, sorry.
Yeah, just yeah. I mean, it's an awful film, but I don't think it's awful and also beautiful. But I don't think it's necessarily like, men aren't watching it going, ugh, that doesn't represent me. No, we're just laughing because it's so ridiculous. The guy, like, doesn't he like stroke off in a sheet or something? Like, it's not, it's doesn't he though? Like, doesn't he like wank into a sheet like while crying? Like, I mean, I love quoting it, but come on, it's what are you, chicken book chicken? I don't even know how it goes. Oh, hi Mark. All right.
No, that was no, that's not really masculine high art. I don't think so.
No,
I don't think men are
I never associated it with masculinity ever.
What she's saying is that this is not, just because a woman wrote it doesn't mean that this should represent women, you know, as creatives.
It's bullshit. I did not hear her. I did not.
Yeah, but it's like, I think that's what she's getting at. She's just saying these women create not really destructives, really. We disavow them. But, you know, it's like, yeah, everybody is partially represented as an individual. Like, men will write stories from a men's perspective, but they can also extend themselves to understand women, and vice versa with women. So it's not like every woman represents women writers. And I hope that wouldn't be the case. I'm glad that she's making that distinction. Because I find that a lot of women regard
do
any
too.
criticism of women to be criticism of all women, and it's like no. Just like men can be
Uh-oh, Allison, your audio cut out.
recognition.
You're
Oh,
Oh, wait, now I can hear you a little bit. You must have touched something.
okay. Let me just double check to see where
No,
I'm
it's
at.
good
Okay,
now.
no.
I can hear you now.
Okay, so like men, what we need to do is recognize women's individuality more. But in order to do that, you've got to let go of all of this collective benefit. Like, like, oh, respect women. Well, what are you respecting? Nothing, really. I mean, you respect the individual and the individual's moral choices. But in order to be individuals, like, it's like women want to be seen as a collective when it's positive, but when there's a presentation of potential collective blame, suddenly they don't. Well, you got to choose one or the other, right?
Yeah.
You need to be judged as individuals. Then you are individuals, which means that women don't, like, you remember Manifesto? Oh, women are so adaptable and creative, and they know advanced calculus, and they can parallel park, and every woman is so awesome that she can launch a rocket into space and blah blah blah. I'm like, no. And as soon as somebody starts saying that about women, I'm like, yeah, not only is it a lie, it's insulting, because it takes a lot of individual effort for a woman to be able to do something like launch a rocket into space. And I don't share that effort with that woman because I'm a woman. It takes a lot of effort to be able to extend compassion to men, especially in a society that seems to stigmatize such an act. And women who don't share nothing with women who do. You see what I'm saying? And the only way you can recognize that is, yeah, of course you do. Preaching to the choir. But yeah, so you can't accept Manifestel giving this fatuous praise to you as a woman if you want to be able to be judged individually as a woman. You got to abjure this to a degree. Because I guess there are some things that women do well, better than men, and I could actually list them, but I'm not going to, because we need to watch more.
All right, I'm going to play more then.
Or unintentionally, choosing to depict femininity in the worst, most annoying way imaginable, to the point that it doesn't even feel human, which I guess they are canonically alien, so... But the damage is done and irreversible. Now there is feminine Star Wars and there is a masculine Star Wars. There is Star Wars made for female audiences and Star Wars that was made for male audiences. This unfortunate set of events is a very fascinating and obvious manifestation of a very basic concept of overcorrection causes proportional overreaction, which served as an ultimate Pandora's box to make blatant sexism trendy again. I think the audience is an involuntary and unconsenting second side of the coin, on the flip side of which is Lucasfilm. I do believe that further down the line, this redundant situation is going to be equally damaging for both female and male factor when it comes to being a fan of, starring in, or making Star Wars. Don't get me wrong, as I've said, the passionate nature of the response to a flagrant provocation sometimes enables a very justified rage to be misfired and be targeted at the wrong side of things. It's hard to keep perspective.
Well, I got to butt in. Okay. So the thing is, what these women have done, Kathleen Kennedy and the others that have essentially ruined Star Wars, is they have made the climate around the brand. They've driven the men away, basically, most of them. There's probably still a lot of guys that'll watch it no matter what, because they'll just eat whatever you put in front of them, which I have a different kind of disdain for. But now the fandom they're upset because they have been disrespected, they have been insulted, they have been called bigots for not enjoying whatever Disney puts out. And so now they're suspicious. And they're going to be very suspicious, especially when they see any project with a woman involved. But I don't blame them for that. But of course, she's saying, "Well, this is unfortunate," and it's like, yeah, but I don't blame them. Like, I'm not going to give Disney my money anymore. Period. Full stop. Until I see some dramatic change. And, you know, it would have to be quite a lot before I even consider going back. So there is it, am I the bad guy because I'm actually acting on the, I mean, like, you have taken the good faith of a very loyal fan base that essentially created the brand. Like, this is another thing these people forget, is that when you make something great, it's not just what you made that makes it great. It's the fans that supported you that made it great, that made it into the behemoth that it is, or at least it was. And now you've basically crapped on them and taken them for granted. And it's easy to do because most of them are men. And so, like, because we already have this meta framework of, you know, men are not entitled to anything that makes them happy. They're not entitled to have standards. They're not entitled to, you know, have opinions on whatever. Well, now then it gives you free license to call them bigots and shit on them and marginalize them. And then when they say, okay, I want to take my money and leave, people like this come out and they're like, oh, well, that's sad because, like, it's a reaction. The kid that's been bullied for, you know, all semester finally fights back, and I don't like it. So anyway, that's just what I think about that.
Well, yeah, and I think what she's saying is she's upset that this has been coded as female Star Wars. But the other thing is that it's being coded as female Star Wars by the women who are creating it. Right? And they're doing that in order to justify their parasitism of the franchise, because they got in because they said, well, we'll make it appeal to this audience, right? By making it female Star Wars, right? And that's why it's being branded that way. You know, it's unfortunate because, again, she's right. This isn't female Star Wars. This is their Star Wars. Specifically, it's the Star Wars of the nepotistic parasites that get into position when you cease to deal in merit and start to deal in so-called disenfranchisement. Because I don't have the position because not because I don't deserve the position, but because there's some aspect of me that's been discriminated against. So give me the position, right? When you change that, but that is inherently a woman's approach to resource distribution, is to distribute those resources based on need, right? Not merit. That's masculine. Merit tends to be masculine. So while previous Star Wars wasn't necessarily a male story, as in it only appealed to men, it was only written to men, it was made in a male framework, which is merit. Right?
Yep.
This is now a female framework, which doesn't create, it doesn't produce, it's about cutting things up and distributing them, which is not something that it's not like something that we didn't need throughout human history. We needed people to distribute things in such a way that tribes survived, right? So this is not invalid. It's not an invalid approach, but it's invalid when it's applied to producing things and creating things of merit, beauty and insight. It's not the right framework to produce media. The male framework is the right framework, but we are losing that framework because we are shaming the crap out of men. And we're not just shaming the crap out of men, we're also shaming the crap out of more masculine women or feminine women who simply understand this is the framework that they're working in and they abide by it. You know, you don't have to be super masculine to understand, hey, I need to be able to perform at this level. And it's not a performance as you're pretending, it's a performance as in you're doing. You're able to do these tasks, you're able to do these skills, you're able to operate at this level of excellence in order to get this done. That, you know, feminine women can understand that. Masculine women can understand that. Men understand that. They seem to understand it innately. It's just inherent to the beast. And the more we marginalize men's point of view, the more we marginalize their approach, the more we marginalize masculinity as toxic, the more we lose those tools. And the more women like this, who are nepotistic, they look at things in terms of what they are owed, rather than giving something to the audience, it's what the audience owes them. You notice that about them? It's
Yeah.
what the audience owes them, not what they can deliver to the audience, what beauty, what insight they can deliver to the audience. It's what the audience owes them in terms of recognition, in terms of money, in terms of whatever it is they want. That attitude, that when we remove masculinity, we get more of that, especially, and these people will say that it is about bringing women's voices out. It's about bringing femininity to the fore, and it is. Like, feminists are inherently feminine in their framework because they see things not in terms of merit, but in terms of what they're owed by virtue of just having a need or being discriminated against or being victimized. That's feminine. I'm sorry, guys, it is the feminine framework. And they bring these feminine frameworks to these properties and these institutions, these organizations, and these problems, and they construct a mess because merit disappears. Okay, so no, this isn't a woman's story, but yes, it's being presented, or it's being created in a female framework, in a female dominated framework.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That I'm getting to the conclusion, and then we'll be done. But that's exactly what I was thinking when I watched this video.
Again.
But yeah, you are. Albernated Retro gave us $5 Canadian. Says, when are they going to get the Blade reboot going so they can have a Marvel movie franchise led by a black male for the third time? I hope they never do it because I like the original Blade. It's just better. And then he gives us another $5 Canadian and says, to be fair, killing off Han Solo was at Harrison Ford's request. Well, he wanted to be killed off in the end of the original movie, part 4. But I don't think the issue is killing him off. It's about how they did it. That, I think, is the main issue. Chrissy Snow snort laughed. Magic Mike and Fireman calendars are proof women do it too. All right, thank you for the Super Chows. Let's move on. Let's finish this off. So listen to this, okay?
And here is the final boss of this video essay. Did women ruin Star Wars? This is going to be as quick as it is easy. How to explain this? Here is a picture of a woman we don't like and blame for shitty content. She is up in the ass of another woman we don't like and blame for shitty content, who is also up in the ass of a man we don't like and blame for shitty content. If women are ruining Star Wars, so are the countless faceless men behind the scenes who hire those women exclusively based on their genitals and not on competency. These are the same men who intentionally rigged their own system to work that way. Why? I don't know. And that is not some conspiracy theory at this point. It's a proven factual fact, unfortunately.
Certainly, there have been times.
All right, that's a clip from Project Veritas, but...
Okay, so I might go and say something a little unexpected. I think that she's right. This is a dynamic between the worst aspects of female and male. When men facilitate the destruction of merit because they want to feel like they're feeding women, basically. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like, this is actually a destructive masculine impulse in many ways. And we've been talking about how women get into a space, or these women with this kind of mentality, they get into a space and they turn it into a buffet for themselves. So instead of saying, what do I owe the audience of Star Wars? They say, what does the audience of Star Wars owe me in terms of resources, in terms of everything? And of course, they're put into position by men who are like these big alpha men who control all of this stuff. And they are presenting Star Wars like a buffet for women. Instead of, this is, you need to work to create good product for the audience. This is my gift to you because I am a benevolent king. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a king giving his mistress a gigantic rock to wear on her finger, right? Except even more destructive, because what he's giving them is fake acclaim as creatives for not being able to do the work. So he's like, I'm going to give this to you, and I'm not going to judge you based on merit. I'm going to judge you based on factors that relate to my own identity as a man. How big of a victim can you make yourself seem? You know, so I can feel like I'm saving not just you, but also all of the women that you represent. And I'm going to get that sense of almost like a narcissistic supply. It's saving all of these women. And this woman will do a shuck and jive and say, oh, I'm going to present to you a gigantic female audience. And you're going to save all of these women for being underserved by your property. And and that is that kind of, again, it's not the boobs on a trampoline. It perhaps is worse. It's that kind of, oh my God, I'll get all of these women metaphorically if I let this woman take my property, cut it up, and make it into something that appeals to women, and I'll have saved all of these women from boredom or something, you know, from the horrible male fans, you know. And this is a dynamic. There's a guy who wants to save women, and there's a woman who's saying, give me money and clout, and you'll be saving a lot of women. You do what I say and give me power, and I'll be sure to oversee the saving of all of those women. And it's all bullshit. You know, it's all just men and women acting out their worst impulses, right? And again, it's still masculine, but it's like there's a masculine that seeks merit and and wants to serve the audience, because the audience indicates whether or not your actions have merit. You know, if they like it, it's popular, if they're enjoying it, if it makes them think, then your actions have merit. You have constructed something that is both beautiful and true, right? And that's what men want. They want to feel like their actions have consequences, positive consequences, usually negative consequences if they're psychos. But women want to get in, and they have this inclination to want to see things in terms of what the audience owes them, you know, and men facilitate that because, again, it's sort of like the negative side of that merit. Like this dude thinks he's getting a whole shit ton of merit by taking this property, cutting it up, letting this woman slice it up and give it to the women because it's never been given to the women before. You see what I'm saying? It's like, this is now Star Wars will be given to the women, and he's going to feed all of these women, and that feels good. It makes him feel like his actions have huge merit. So it's the unconscious, unexamined exercise of masculine and feminine impulses, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the end of the video. And I got a Super Chow, and I guess we could like wrap it up. So Richard Bier gives us $5 and says, I think that the people demanding representation are those who also believe that just about everything runs on automatic mode, requiring little to no adjustments externally, and that it doesn't really matter just who occupies the seat of power and responsibility due to the automation taking care of the process. Also, Brian, there is the meme showing why gatekeeping is necessary in art in your DMs. Oh, yeah, and I saw it. It's the one where the artist was trying to paint something and birds pooped on his canvas. And the second part is he exhibited the canvas to the praise of the audience at the gallery. Yeah, I've seen a few memes like that. I saw one where it showed a caveman, and he's like taking a shit in his cave, and he's got his hand on the wall, and it's covered in shit. And then it cuts to like the present day, and there's like velvet ropes, you know, and people are taking pictures of all these handprints on the cave walls. So anyway, yeah, thank you for the Super Chow, Richard. I did see that. Yeah, I mean, a lot of modern art, unfortunately, is just used for money laundering these days, which is sad. But yeah, that's it. So, Allison, do you want to take us out? Oh, you're muted or something. Your audio's not working.
Sure. I'm actually to speak to that. It's like, you know, and maybe I'm missing some of this stuff, but of what was said. Actually, just give me a second. I'm going to take a look. Okay, there is an actual merit to abstract art. It's not just putting shit down. There's a rhythm to it, and a way of actualizing the entire canvas. So there is actually merit in abstract art, but it's something that can be very easy to fake, which is really unfortunate because it does attract a lot of fakers. just like apparently Star Wars writing. But
Yeah.
anyway, because it was
Yeah.
maybe it was because it was there was such a solid backing that you could construct good stories for a long time with, I don't want to say a lot of effort, but you don't have to put as much effort in when you inherit a framework. But anyway, so yeah, like thank you. I want to once again, I actually do have some thank yous. Thank you to everybody who sent in a Super Chow. That's very much appreciated. Like never think that, like $5, even, $2, $5, whatever, $10 isn't helpful. It very much is. I know everybody supports as much as they are able to make sure that this content can continue. And I appreciate all of you. It's just as meaningful for somebody to part with $2 when that's a big part of their budget as whatever else. You know what I mean? What matters is that you care about these issues and you support. And speaking of which, we did get a message in from an individual who is has created a petition. Sorry, it took me a moment. A petition to help men in the military who have been wrongly accused of sexual assault or sexual wrongdoing. And you can get that petition at www.change.org/unjustucmj. So that's change.org/unjustucmj. Okay, so go there. It's also in our Discord. If you're interested, our Discord has lots of resources and
action opportunities. Is that where it is?
Yes, action opportunities in our Discord. So it's like if you want to help out with the community, if you want to see the resources that I've put together on all of the things that we talk about, you want to have extra content, then please consider becoming a member. And if you want to have extra special patron content, consider subscribing at feedthebadger.com/subscribe. But do right now sign the petition to fight for military men falsely accused and wrongfully convicted. And again, that petition is at www.change.org/unjustucmj. Okay. And if you want to help out, you want to help make services available to men directly, then definitely check out Canadian Center for Men and Families, because they always need help. And if you want to support our content, bringing attention to all of these issues on my channel, on Honey Badger Radio's channel, then you can do so at feedthebadger.com/support. I want to thank Anonymous for putting in $1,000 to our fundraiser. Thank you, Anonymous. Very much appreciated. You know who you are. Thank you. And yeah, so those are the things that I wanted to tell you about what's happening, what you can help with, and I will hand it back to you, Brian.
All right. So if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already. Wait, hold up. You should probably do it. Okay, you do.
Yeah. No, you can do the like, subscribe thing, but maybe I should do like, thank you for your kind attention. Thank you for joining me on the channel. Oh yeah, and if you want to see the actual vertical version of this, go to my channel. I think if you just search Typhon Blue, you'll find my channel.
Horizontal, the horizontal one.
Horizontal. Yes, thank you, Brian. Yeah. The horizontal version where it's not so dire that I slowly drift this way.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you still do it in the other one too, but like, yeah.
A little bit. The
same
like,
actions are being taken.
Yeah, but you have a little more real estate for me
a little
to do
bit.
It in.
I don't think it's much.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so if you want to see like the vertical version that won't become unlisted afterwards, you can go to my channel at Typhon Blue. And yeah, like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and thank you for your kind attention. Yeah.
Are machines, dude. Okay, they are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.